Imagine a tropical paradise choosing reef protection over economic promises. We don't hear that much, but it happened in Cayman Islands just 2 months ago in April. We're going to talk about it on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. This is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. And for now until the rest of time, I'm really going to be focusing on action. And something that you can be focused if you want to take action for the ocean is you can join the Undertow. A couple of episodes ago, I actually published 2 episodes on the Undertow. It's a startup, an ocean community that I co-founded with, or I was brought on as a co-founder with my 2 co-founders, Amanda Horn and Serena Wynn. And we are putting this together because we want people to feel comfortable in taking action for the ocean, connecting with the ocean, and so forth. You can come in there, virtual events, in-person events. This is an online app that we are cultivating this community together. No algorithm, so you can always get ocean information when you're on the app. And you can join the Undertow simply by going to speakupforblue.com/join the Undertow. It's a bit of a wait list right now to get in. We're releasing the app shortly, but we want you to join the Undertow and take action. So speakupforblue.com/join the Undertow. Let's get into action that was taken by the island of Cayman Islands, Grand Cayman. And it was just a wonderful thing. It's where you go like, look, there's a referendum held. Do you want a big pier on your island? Okay, yes or no? 64% said no, no pier. That's awesome. That's not as easy as it sounds, but it's so great when democracy works in favor of, citizens and for the environment. That doesn't happen a lot. So here's the thing of what's going on. So cruise ships are a big part of island communities, whether the citizens want it or not. Cruise ships go all over the Caribbean and like Mexico, all over the Caribbean, like really anywhere you want. And Grand Cayman is part of that. I remember visiting there a number of years ago, and along 7 Mile Beach, which is a gorgeous beach, there's a big pier where cruise ships come in and people can come for the day and, shop. And it's supposed to bring tourism on a daily basis or on a semi-daily basis to the island, but it doesn't always necessarily work out in favor for the citizens. There's a lot of environmental damages when building a pier, whether they want it or not. It's a very intrusive process. You have to destroy some underwater part of the ocean for the pier to go in. And this pier, they wanted to bring a larger cruise ship directly to Georgetown, the capital. But there was concerns of reef destruction, there's concerns of over tourism, and there's concerns of just the transparency of the process. Because let's be honest, these processes are for developers. These processes are in favor of tourism, but really for these large ships, cruise ships. And so they're there for the companies, not necessarily the citizens. So a referendum was held on April 30th, 2025. The result, 64.5% voted against the pier, which was really interesting. This is a non-binding referendum, but had a strong public impact and was held alongside votes on cannabis decriminalization and a national lottery. So there's a lot of votes going on. I just think it's great that the island put that up for referendum to say, hey, do the citizens actually want this? A lot of times the citizens don't really feel like they don't really have a say. Sometimes they don't have a say, and the government just makes the decisions for them based on, people voting the government in. This time they held a referendum. I guess it's a small population that they can hold a referendum, although I feel like referendums pretty humbles the government and being like, do we know what people want? So we'll hold a referendum. And if whatever that referendum will say, it is what it is. I mean, let's look at Brexit in the UK. Not many people thought that Brexit would happen. The people voted on a referendum. Now Brexit happened, and we have what we have now in terms of the UK out of the European Union. There have been other votes that have happened across the world in different democracies for referendums. I think it's a great way to reset and give the power back to the people and to see what people really actually want. Now, there were a lot of campaigns that were run by CPR Cayman, National Trust, and other grassroots groups led the opposition to this pier. And the key concerns, again, were damage to coral reefs and marine ecosystems, the threats to small businesses and cultural heritage, and the lack of clear economic benefits. So here's the thing when we talk about small businesses. Small businesses are, the backbone of society, right? We see small businesses, we go into those businesses, we connect with the community. The money stays within the community because the people who own those small businesses live within the community. So as you exchange money for products, that money, the profit that they pay for, will go towards the house that small business owner lives in, the groceries that they pay for. They put money back into the community, whether it be through charitable donations or even just regular, day-to-day spending. And so they are the backbone. And we've seen in a number of different towns towns and cities across the world, that these small businesses are being put out of business due to large corporate businesses that come in and just get smaller prices because they have a better purchasing power, and they just can serve the community more. You get everything you want in those big stores. You don't have to go to a store from store to store. And people who are just in a rush are in that. They're just in a rush, and it's very difficult to keep a small business these days going, active in the community. So that's a tough thing. When you have cruise ships, now how do the cruise ships relate? When you have cruise ships that come in and people get off the boat, you are going into a specific area, right? You are going into a specific area. If you're not in that area, you can only go so far. A lot of times taxis and Ubers or whatever will take you to different parts of the island if it's a small enough island for the day, and then bring you back in time to get back on your cruise ship. But a lot of the times you're in specific areas. Those areas sometimes where the port goes in are maybe owned by bigger businesses, maybe owned by part of the cruise lines. Who knows? You never know where these corporations are putting these, what we think look like small businesses, but are businesses that get a benefit from where these cruise ships go. So the smaller businesses pay the price, or they have to pay larger rent, or they have to pay for their stores to be there, or things like that. So it's a real, non-benefit to this. It's a negative impact to these small businesses. So having these cruise ships, these bigger cruise ships come in is not necessarily good for the businesses, but also not good for the ocean. Not only do you have the impact of the reef destruction in construction of the pier, but you also have people coming to the island, more people coming to the island. We are in a big growth economy. Everybody's talking about, how do I grow? How do I do this? How do I grow? I want to grow bigger. I want to scale up. Everything's big. Everything's going up. At some point, we have to look at these islands, and they are small islands. They don't need massive growth. Sure, they need money. They want to grow. They want their economy to do well. But at some point, there's, when you get that benefit and you peak in terms of money, only certain people benefit from that money, as we just talked about. But also, the reef gets destroyed. The environment gets changed. The citizens who live there have to change as well and have to adapt as well. And it's not always a benefit, and oftentimes it's a negative benefit to those island communities. Now, I should preface this. I'm not somebody who lives on a small island, so I don't know just the day-to-day impacts that small island communities have on large tourism sort of pushes, like a bigger cruise line coming in. But I can't imagine that would be something that would be easily adaptable to, especially when you're already trying to adapt to small island living, which you have increased prices. It's very expensive to live in the Caribbean, especially on Grand Cayman. It's very expensive just to shop for day-to-day activities. When we went there, just a loaf of bread, milk, and a couple of other items cost $100 US. That's a lot of money just for a small amount of items. And that was before COVID. That was before massive inflation. I can just imagine what it is now. It's very difficult for citizens to live on that island that are born on that island, that not are coming in and buying big houses and are rich. These are people who have regular jobs, the middle class or even lower middle class that are having trouble surviving. I can't even imagine what people who are below that status are having trouble with. So it could be very difficult in that. So the fact that they added a vote and said, hey, do you want this massive pier? People said no. People weren't happy, but a lot of people spoke out, which was great. Voices like Sylvia Earle, Jean-Michel Cousteau, they also spoke out against this pier. So the campaigners got people from outside of Grand Cayman to speak out on their behalf to make sure that, hey, you know what? It's not just people on the island are concerned, but it's also people outside the island that have a big impact. Dr. Sylvia Earle and Jean-Michel Cousteau and others have a huge impact in terms of what happens. They have press releases. They have public relations teams that are just amazing, and their message gets far reaching. If that gets out and it's negative, that has an impact on how people look. So that's one of the things. So, we talk a lot about that, how international voices can help in areas and saying, hey, I'm not going to go there if we have these big impacts, right? So that's always good. Now, there were arguments against, the cruise industry was arguing against, but they said they're going to have to adapt to it. They said it would modernize Cayman tourism and keep it competitive. But even though they have frustration with the vote, the way it turned out, they are willing to adapt and collaborate. We'll see how that happens. That's something that says, I'm glad they're saying that. They're not saying, hey, the vote was corrupt or it was fraudulent or anything like that. We're back into hey, democracy rules, and this is what people want. Now, cruise company may adapt to rules or explore other islands, so they might go to other islands. In this case, that's what the Islanders have said. The Grand Cayman Islanders have said, you know what? We don't want you here. It's not for us. The other thing is will development resurface in another form? So are they going to try and get a cruise line in some other ways, more cruise liners in other ways, build a smaller pier. Who knows what's going to happen? That's going to be a really difficult thing to look at. But this is really an example. This story is really an example of local people making a global change. And that's really important. It sets a precedent for the Caribbean and beyond. This says if you give the people their power to vote on what they want and what they don't want, they will use it and they will activate that voice and they will say, hey, this is what we want, and that will turn into action. So the call to action really is to support more local efforts like these wherever you live, and it's very important that you act locally. And then protecting oceans really starts with protecting places we love. So just like the people of Cayman did, we need to love our oceans. We need to love our environment. Whether you live in Ontario like I do, like where you're beside the Great Lakes, or you live along the coastline, you need to get out there, enjoy nature, understand nature, not just go for a hike for the sake of hiking, but really look around. Take like the iNaturalist app, look at the species that are around. Are they native? Are they invasive? Just start to look and just love what you see and enjoy it. Take your time to just relax. And I think that's really important. So this is just a great story of local action actually doing some great work and preventing a large cruise liners or more larger cruise liners coming in and a bigger pier being a destructive bigger pier not being built. So that's always great. And yeah, that's just, I want to share that to show that there is hope and there are ways that people are protecting the ocean, even in small islands, and having international voices as well as local voices. So I want to thank the people of Grand Cayman for doing what they're doing and enjoying their ability to vote and taking that ability to vote to heart. And I want to thank you for listening to this episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Don't forget, if you want to take action, you can go to speakupforblue.com/join the Undertow. But I want to thank you so much for listening to this episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin from the True North Strong and Free. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.